chair, who is going to summarize decisions of cabinet. So without further ado, can I invite you, Madam?
Thank you very much, Chief Secretary. Indeed, it has been a very hectic day. Just before I read to you the action points for this decision matrix, which is the 9th one, I would like to introduce to you, I've got a number of ministers here who will certainly be ready to answer all your questions pertaining to COVID-19 in terms of resources put together by government. I've got Minister Mutuli Ngube, Professor, and I've got also Minister of Local Government, Honorable July Moyo. He will be able to talk on the coordination role of Ministers of Provincial Affairs and Devolution. Then I do have Professor Honorable Murwira, Minister of Higher Education, who will be talking on the production which our institutions of higher learning will be doing of hand sanitizers, face masks, construction of makeshift isolation centers, both in the provinces, in the districts. I also do have with me here Honorable Dr. Nzenza. Honorable Dr. Nzenza will be there to answer your issues from the industries. Then I do have Honorable Kazembe, our Minister of Home Affairs, and he will certainly be dealing with issues to do with our borders and any information to that effect. Then Honorable Mavima will certainly be talking to you, will be able to answer all your questions on the food mitigation which government will be doing in view of this lockdown. And I do have Minister Moyo, of course, Obadiah Moyo. He is the Minister of our Health and Child Care to talk to you about statistics and all the technical questions you may have regarding COVID-19. So yes, Cabinet received a report on the country's preparedness and response to the COVID-19 outbreak as presented by Honorable Vice President Mohadi, who is the chairman of the Interministerial Task Force on COVID-19 outbreak. Cabinet noted with satisfaction that the general populace had heeded the call to stay at home, and this is commended a lot. This is to prevent the spread of COVID-19. The Zimbabwe Republic Police was also applauded for being cooperative in enforcing the lockdown orders. Cabinet considered and approved the action plan as presented by the chair of the Interministerial Task Force, Honorable Vice President KCD Mohadi. And key among the proposed actions were the following. A, that measures be put in place to ensure that the economy continues to work through this lockdown period. B, that registration of vulnerable communities by the Department of Social Welfare be stepped up in order to ensure that all the households affected by the lockdown are catered for through the usual social protection mechanisms availed by government. C, that a cash transfer program be established to assist the affected individuals during this lockdown period. D, that the cash transfer be targeted at those people that have lost their resources or livelihoods due to the measures put in place to combat the spread of COVID-19, including those in the informal sector. E, that handy sanitizers and face masks be produced by institutions of higher learning and pharmaceutical companies. F, that duty for the importation of materials required in the manufacture of drugs and other materials used in the COVID-19 response be suspended. Duty for the importation of all those drugs and other materials will be suspended. And G, that COVID-19 treatment and isolation centers be mapped in the following locations across the country, that is. In the 5 central hospitals which are referral hospitals. And then in the 10 provincial hospitals, we know that we've got a hospital in each province. And then in 52 district hospitals, all this will be done under the supervision of local government and public works and the Ministry of Health and Child Care. H, that the Public Service Commission tracks the transportation of civil servants to and from work to ensure that buses are fumigated and passengers are being sanitized as they enter the buses. I, that ZUPCO buses be deployed to all towns and cities to enable for the ferrying of people in the essential services. J, that the Minister of Finance and Economic Development funds Complex to enable the company to avail chemicals of water purification, thereby making the provision of water for our communities possible. K, that local authorities improve provision of water to communities through decongesting the already available water points and availing additional water points, particularly in the medium and high density areas. And I, the banking account details that will be used for receipt of donations towards COVID-19 will be acknowledged and publicized, thereby there will be a central receiving point for donations. Then M, that the issuance of birth certificates, national registration IDs, and travel documents by the Registrar General that be suspended, and that only burial orders and death certificates, so there will be skeleton staff to make sure that burial orders and death certificates are given. And that going forward, the task force will brief the nation on a weekly basis, while the Ministers of Health and Child Care and Information, Publicity and Broadcasting Services will provide updates more regularly as government moves to operationalize the approved action plan. I thank you sincerely once again for being here. Thank you.
Thank you, Honorable Minister. At this stage, we give the opportunity to members of the media to pose any questions to the ministers. So let's start the ball rolling. Who wants to initiate? Zimbabwe, back.
Thank you, Takuchi Zimbabwe Papers TV. My first question goes to the Minister of Finance and Economic Development. When you came up with the Transitional Stabilization Program, you said it's private sector-led economic revival. And when the President spoke about the lockdown on Friday, we posed the question to say, are there going to be any stimulus packages to support players in the private sector? And today we've just been briefed by the Minister to say that one of the things that's arising is to ensure that the economy continues to work. So again, I ask the question, are there going to be any packages that are going to be given to the private sector to ensure that they are cushioned during this lockdown period? And then my second question is concerning the cash transfers. What criteria are you going to be using to ensure that everyone, you highlighted that players in the informal sector, how are you going to get the details of all the players in the informal sector who were affected by the lockdown, and these cash transfers can also be given to you? Thank you.
Okay. And this second volunteer. Yes, please.
My name is Aaron Yaraya from HMD. My question goes to the Minister of Industry and Commerce concerning the manufacturing industry, specifically Paramount Government. Yesterday, we visited there and discovered that they are operating and more than 800 workers were there. But the issue was they were not prepared to use preventive measures. So I would like to know whether Paramount Government is one of the companies allowed to operate. also to the Minister of Health, whether they are checking these industries if they are following the preventive measures. Thank you.
Okay. Any other question? If we might not get it before, then we will call it a day. Eh?
Maybe the follow-up questions. Yeah.
Okay, yes, yeah.
Abigail Temple from ZBC. My question is on the issue of sanitizers. From a survey that I was doing today, I noticed that the people were saying that it looks like the authorities are only focusing in areas in the CBD, in the low density areas. They're saying we don't have hand sanitizers here, we don't have even in the public spaces. So what is government doing to ensure that people in the high density areas also have access to hand sanitizers and other hygienic things that we might need in the fight against the COVID-19 pandemic?
Okay.
Good.
Last question, this segment. Okay, so we end with the 3 questions, but we'll give you an opportunity.
I think there are more than 4, Chief Secretary.
Oh, there are more
Yes,
than
yes,
4.
yes, yes, yes. Thank you, thank you very much, Chief Secretary and Honorable Ministers. Taguchi Ambakwe, this was directed to you, Minister of Finance. He obviously referred to TSP, and when you said it was private sector driven, and his question is actually, are there any packages given to private sector to cushion them against this COVID-19 lockdown?
Thank you very much. Thank you, Ambakwe, for this question. Of course, the fiscal response and the monetary sector response that has been announced has to do with COVID-19, to deal with the impact of COVID-19 on the economy, and not necessarily TSP driven. So I want to be clear about that. It's an emergency response. We're almost at war with an invisible enemy, and we're responding in such. So what should we do, and what are we doing? So our approach really has been driven by the need for a duty of rescue. A duty of rescue means that we will target the most vulnerable parts of our society, citizens who are most vulnerable, but also targeting our most vulnerable businesses, especially the small businesses. So it's a duty of rescue approach that we are taking, and this also helps us stay within our fiscal envelope. We're not doing it on our own. Also, we're working with the development partners whom we thank for coming on board so far. So if I can just remind you, I hope you have seen the statement that we issued yesterday, where if you look at what we did, for example, on the 2% tax, we said now we want to reinvest that and target social protection, the health sector, and social services, and really deal with the vulnerable in that way by redirecting resources from the 2% tax away from some of the infrastructure projects that I'm afraid will be slowed down slightly when we tackle the impact of the virus. But we also made available immediately $3 million for the Ministry of Health to be able to import essential drugs, equipment and so forth. And they are doing that. If you look at what we've done as well, because we say that it's a duty of rescue type approach to dealing with our intervention, fiscal intervention, we need to increase the capacity of the Minister of Health. So we've allowed the Minister of Health to, as government, and supported them with resources to hire an additional 4,000 health workers, including an additional 200 medical staff, to make sure there's capacity to tackle the virus. All that is resources, is part of the budget that we allocate in that way. Now coming to cash transfers.
I thought I was
so
going.
I'm going to skip cash transfers for now.
Yeah.
I'm going to skip.
If you can allow me, Honorable Minister, once you have answered the first question, we'll then go to Professor Mavima.
For sure.
Yes.
For sure, yes.
Yeah.
Let me just carry on.
Okay.
Then on the insurance cover, we actually are working with the PSMAS and others to make sure that there's enough medical cover for frontline civil servants, as well as to make sure that those who are exposed have sufficient life cover as well in case that they lose their lives. We're looking at corporate tax, which is directly probably in line with what you're asking. What we've said, they will suspend any penalties for late payment of corporate tax. Penalties and any interest we will suspend. Then also we've suspended duties for companies that are involved in the manufacture of such equipment which is used or drugs that are used to fight COVID-19 and for the health sector in general. So any company within that sector, pharmaceutical equipment companies, will benefit, and that's the kind of support that this is doing. So you can see that we are very clear about our approach. It's a digital rescue approach of focusing on vulnerability, saving lives, keeping small businesses afloat. But I'll come to the cash transfer issue as a separate issue. Did you want them to proceed to cash transfer, or you want to switch to Mavima?
I actually wanted to switch on to Mavima. If there's anything you want to add in, you can then come in later, Honourable Minister, if that is okay. Yes, we move to you, Professor Mavima, on the cash transfer. His question was, what criteria are you going to use to target the rightful beneficiaries?
Thank you, Chair. Chair, the instruction in Cabinet was very clear today to say that the Department of Social Work should be the one that registers the people to benefit under this new cash transfer system. And it will use the same criteria that it has always used to identify vulnerable groups. The difference in this particular case is that we have new vulnerabilities as a result of loss of income. And it's going to target all Zimbabweans, but focusing mainly in the urban areas, because we continue to save our rural areas through the normal food mitigation program, which is continuing, by the way. We are still continuing the normal food mitigation program, even though we have new protocols that ensure that we minimize the transmission or potential transmission of COVID-19 in those areas. We are making sure that our people are protected, the workers themselves. We are also making sure that we have increased distribution points to make sure that people, very few people get to each point at a specific time. So really the new cash transfers are for urban areas, and the Department of Social Welfare is going to use the same criteria that it has used before. But we have new vulnerable now because of the loss of income. And it's every Zimbabwean who has been affected in that manner. We are estimating that initially we may be getting about 1 million people in these urban areas. But we'll review as we go along. If we find that we need more, then we'll be definitely doing the collaborative effort with the relevant ministries, including the Ministry of Finance and Economic Development, to scale up if there is a need to scale up. But initially, we are targeting 1 million Zimbabweans. Thank you.
Thank you, Professor Murwira. I just wanted to get back to you, Professor Ngube. You still want to add something on the cash transfers, maybe?
Again, the issue of cash transfers is premised on the whole concept of digital rescue, where we want to rescue those who are difficult. I want to emphasize that. Mr. explained very clearly, Mr. Professor Mavima, that the criteria were very clear as to how to do this. And naturally, with the advantage of mobile banking, so most of these cash transfers will use the mobile platforms. And we want to make sure that the citizens who are receiving these funds don't pay the transaction fees. We'll ask mobile platforms to suspend the transaction fees, or indeed we pay that as government to make sure the citizens get full value for their cash transfers. But of course, this will also show the community that government is skin in the game. We are aware that the national community wants to get into the support. They want to give us support our citizens in terms of cash transfers. But we also need to show the government that we're skin in the game, we put our money on the table. That's what we've done. So we expect the international community then to meet us halfway in doing so, and we are appealing to them to join us in this cash transfer program that Mr. Mapima has described. I thank you.
Thank you, Honorable Minister Mtuli Ngube. And we move on to Alan Nyamayaro, is from H Metro, and the question is directed to you, Dr. Nzenza, Minister of Industry and Commerce. His concern is about the visited Paramount Garment, and they found 800 employees who were working there, no adherence to the measures which are put down for the lockdown. What is how do you explain that, and do you know about that? And they would also want from you, who move to Minister Obadiah Moyo, they would also want to know, as a Ministry of Health and Childcare, what measures have you put in place to check on these industries which may not be adhering to the measures put in place? Minister Nzenza.
Thank you for the question. When the President announced the national lockdown, he was very clear in saying that essential industries and services will remain open in order to support the health sector, and also to ensure that there is no disruption to the delivery of critical goods and services. We have put across the essential services that need, we put across the essential services that need to remain open. We've also been very clear in saying that those industries that we've identified will need to maintain the strictest occupational health and safety measures and to maintain social distance. I've heard what you've just said regarding Paramount Gowns, and you mentioned that there are 800 workers that are working. What we would say as a Ministry of Industry and Commerce is that if they have applied to remain open and they are preparing people protective clothing, then they should operate. However, what you have just said clearly shows that they are not being compliant, and we will be investigating so that we ensure that our people are protected from the spread of COVID-19. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Nzenza. Minister of Health and Child Care, the question was just, as a Minister of Health in charge of health, what measures have you put in place to make sure that you check on what is happening around in these industries where people may be working without adhering to the measures put in place for this lockdown?
Thank you very much, Chairperson. Definitely, if Paramount is having 800 people, then definitely, like the Minister of Industry and Commerce has indicated, that's grossing compliance, and you will have to check on that and make sure that they remain within the set parameters. Otherwise, we want to have all these preventive measures being adhered to for us to be able to achieve the public health strategy that we have set, which will enable us to be able to control the spread of the virus. So our environmental health officers will definitely be there to check on all those industries which are going beyond the set numbers. And this is something which will also be working together with the police, so that we can be able to monitor this unacceptable numbers, and not complying, with the set regulations and measures. Thank you.
Thank you, Honorable Minister Obadiah Moyo. We move on to the last question, was from Abi, ZBC. This is directed to you, Minister. I know a lot of higher institutes of learning are actually into manufacturing, production of sanitizers, surveys. Maybe you can also talk about even the makeshift isolation centers which you'll be doing. Thank you. And I think when her particular question was the sanitizer being focused on CBDs and not high density suburbs. But I thought that sanitizers are for everybody, even the rural areas. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Chair, and thank you, Abdi, for the question. The task force tasked institutions of higher learning and, of course, and also private companies to be involved in the manufacture of sanitizers, because we have got chemistry departments and we also have setups within our framework of education that produces goods and services, which is Education 5.0. So what is happening is that setups have been done at Pindura University of Science Education, at Chinua University of Technology, at Great Zimbabwe University, at Midland State University, as well as at the National University of Science and Technology. When it comes to the manufacture, we know that today there's 20,000 liters of ethanol, which is going to come from Triangle, from the Northfield, going to use that as a setup which can produce 2,000 liters in 30 minutes, which basically means now 4,000 liters per hour. All these sanitizers, including other universities, we will be able to produce more than 15,000 liters basically per day. And with all these will be offloaded, because this is government which is manufacturing at its institutions of higher learning, and it's destined for the Ministry of Health, and the Ministry of Finance and Economic Development has already provided for 33 million for part of this, also including protective clothing, and what I'm putting on is proudly MSU as we speak. So the issue is that we are looking forward by the end of this week to a glut of sanitizers as per plan. Thank you.
I would just want to give the Minister of Health and Childcare in terms of how you will be distributing these sanitizers and all the masks, maybe to follow up on her question.
Thank you. Thank you, Chairperson. We have a mechanism of distribution countrywide through our NatFarm network. So after the production, whether it's produced in the Midlands, the product will go to our NatFarm in Midlands, who will then distribute. It is in Matabeleland and so forth. And nationally, Harare, NatFarm, will be able to distribute to all the provinces. They'll be able to send to all their regional warehouses and be able to record everything and move everything. Everything has to be accounted for at each and every regional office. So we have a very good network. Just receiving it within a matter of the next hours, within the next days after receiving, the products will end up at the institutions. So that's what we have. Thank you.
Thank you. I just want to remind the members of the Fourth Estate, this is an opportunity to ask your questions. We've got all these are members of the task force. If there are any issues regarding food distribution which you want to hear more about, that issues of water, local authorities, we have Honorable July Moyo there, and even issues of coordination, this is the time. So you are being given your second round. Thank you.
Chair, before you proceed,
and, oh, sorry. Oh, okay.
Sorry, Chair, thank you so much. I just want to add on the issue of sanitizers. We shouldn't underestimate the power of soap and water. So even in the event that you don't have access to the actual sanitizers, I'm reliably informed that water and soap can do the trick. It can also sanitize. So I'm sure everybody the majority of our people have access to soap and water. I think.
Thank you. Running water. Yes, that's right. Yeah. Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Honorable Minister Kazembe Kazembe. And again, he's there. If you've got any questions about the closure of the RG's office and also our borders, he will be ready to answer your questions. So I'm back to you, Chief Secretary, for the fourth round.
Thank you, Chairperson. We are in the second round. As you have heard, you have been given an opportunity to flag any questions relating to the honorable ministers who are here present. This is your chance. We're going to do a repeat. Do we have any? No, and so you start with you repeat.
Okay, Abigail Tembo from ZPC. My question is related to the Minister of Information and the Minister of Health. Why is it that people are not getting enough information on the COVID cases? As much as we understand that the names of the people who have been tested positive for COVID-19 cannot be released, but I was watching other media houses, like for example in India, they would just say case number 9 was at the cabinet briefing on the 30th of March. Therefore, people will know who to trace, where to trace. For example, in India, it's being spread usually in churches. So if people are to know that case number 6 was at maybe UMC Church or was at Avondale Shopping Center, that way people can really know and get to be tested. For now, it's just about cases. We're now at number 7, we're now at number 8. So to them, it doesn't mean anything. We're not bringing it closer to home. Give us more information so that we work with that. We tell the people what's on the ground, so that there is no information gap.
Okay. You are repeating again.
My question is directed to the Minister of Home Affairs. What sort of discipline those violating lockdown? I mean, the reports that there are some municipal police officers and the ZRB officers beating those found offside or loitering in the CBP. And my second question goes to the Minister of Finance concerning good news that the United Nations Secretary General has announced the waiving of sanctions. Does this help, this message coming after we never received any help from these European countries, or another help that would help the Zimbabweans in fighting COVID-19? I thank you.
Okay. Yes, again, we're having the same people. This side, please. Will be your chance. Yes.
They're all happy.
After that,
All right, thank you. I still want to pose my question to the Minister of Finance. The 2% tax with the lockdown, this was a major revenue earner for government. How much are we projecting to lose as government since we're on lockdown? And then the reintroduction of the US dollar. Business already, we've talked to some players in the business sector, as you, Zimbabwe National Chamber of Commerce. They've said this is another policy shift, something they've been calling government not to do. Are we going to be able to go back to monocurrency? Because the anthem before the lockdown was de-dollarization, de-dollarization. Then my third question goes to the Minister of Health or Minister of Home Affairs. We've seen police officers at roadblocks as they carry out their duty. They are not wearing protective clothing. They are wearing their anti-riot gear. Is this enough to protect them if they are going to be searching cars and coming in contact with people who might be infected? How safe are the youth persons? Thank you.
we have the last one.
Okay, mine is just a small clarification from the Minister of Health. I just wanted to understand.
Name?
Okay, sorry. My name is Tende Mugabe from the Herald.
Okay.
I just want a clarification from the Minister of Health, especially relating to our confirmed cases. Why is it that information relating to that normally comes at night? Is there any reason to that?
That was the last time.
That was the last question. It's okay. Let them.
My name is Samuel Chagauda from Joe 6 Richard. My question goes to the Minister of Health. Honorable Minister, I just want to understand how are we as a country or as a people, or is there any explanation health-wise as to why we have managed to keep our numbers at a steady growth in terms of COVID cases? And also, are we doing enough as a country in terms of testing? Because I have seen other countries are on a massive testing campaigns. Are we, because I've seen ours are still below 200 or just above 200 tested cases.
Okay.
All right. You are not happy that we don't have we have a study group. No, it's okay. Thank you. Thank you once again for the questions. And the second round was Abi. She said we are not getting enough information on the cases. We need more information so that at least it will be helpful to the people. You have just said this when the minister actually presented a report on the cases, and I'm sure, Minister, you can take this opportunity to walk through that.
We'll go through the report.
Yes.
Okay. So I'll start with the issue regarding location of cases and why we are not announcing movement of cases. Sorry. Why we are not announcing movement of cases would have been found positive. That's correct, right? This is something we are actually developing. As a matter of fact, today in Cabinet we talked about this, and this is something our ministry is working together with the Ministry of Higher and Tertiary Education. The facilities are there, it's just a matter of implementing that. And we're just starting, so we are building on the technology that is available. ICT is there to give us assistance, so you are thinking very correctly. That is the way to think, so that we can all have at a glance, information regarding to what's happening, especially as to whether people want to know who was there, where were they near that person, or whatever. So that's very good thinking, and that's the way we're also thinking. It helps us to be able to trace the contacts. You can do that at a glance, utilizing satellites, utilizing the mobile phones. You'll be able to pick up, where the person moved from and who they met with. So it's the technology which is available, which is useful for contact tracing, and also for the general public to be able to know. So that's something coming in the very near future. When I say near future, I'm talking a matter of days. Correct, Professor Mugiran? Yeah, a matter of days. We are working on that. Why are police officers not wearing protective gear? I think we do encourage them to wear protective gear. The Ministry of Higher and Tertiary Education has assisted us a lot in the production of the masks and so forth. And these masks are obviously not in large numbers in Zimbabwe. We are having to compete with the rest of the world, and that's why we are having to produce much more through the various universities. And at the same time, we're also working with the police tailoring department. They also have their own tailoring department. So all we have to do is provide them with the material so that we can be able to sew some more masks and so forth. And gloves, we are also getting more gloves. As we get more gloves, all our police officers, we want them to be wearing, to be fully kitted as they attend to the public. So why does information come out at night? Yes, that's a very interesting observation. It doesn't mean night box or whatever. The situation is the testing scheme, right? We have to batch the samples, and some samples will be coming from all over the country. So they arrive morning, and then the testing system itself takes a long time, before you get the results. The testing system that we have available at the moment is not the rapid system. We have the polymerase chain reaction, or PCR system, which takes 5 hours. And part of that testing system requires that after the sample has been taken out, has been taken from the patient, you have to extract it. You do what are called oral nasopharyngeal swabbing or oropharyngeal swabbing, and then you take those samples in media, and then you extract the virus, and then you have to amplify the DNA of the virus. Then you have to amplify the DNA of the virus or RNA of the virus.
You're getting too deep, Minister. These are the people.
No, it's not a simple process. That's why it ends up coming out at night. There's an extraction process, and then the amplification process, and then after amplifying, you have to read, and come up with the results. By that time, it's already 8 o'clock. You'll be waiting for those results. So that's why it takes a bit longer. But obviously, in future, we want the time to be reduced, and we can only be able to reduce that time by utilizing the rapid tests. The rapid tests will take only 15 minutes. And in some cases, 8 minutes. There's some other new testing systems which are even shorter. But the problem with this rapid test is that if it comes out positive, you still have to go back and do the 5-hour tests. So if you do your rapid, you use blood. If you have to do the 5-hour test, the PCR, you use the extractions, from the oropharyngeal, or
Minister.
extractions. Okay, thank you.
I just wanted you, Minister, if you can read those 8 cases, the charts you have for.
Right. Let's now go to the current results. The last one of which came out last night. So far, I'll just go through the whole lot. Cumulative number of tests that we've done to date is 241, and the negative test results out of that were 233, leaving 8 positive test results. And then the first case, we all know, in Victoria Falls, that's where they live, and they traveled out of Zimbabwe, so it's an imported case from the UK. And their clinical condition, remains mild. It's a mild disease that they have. They are stable. And we've just been advised today that they remain in good condition. And the second case was an importation from the United States, and we unfortunately lost them. The third case, a 52-year-old male who traveled to Dubai, and they are from Marsh West, specifically Rua. And their clinical condition is that they remain stable and they've got a mild disease. The fourth case is a female, 24-year-old female, who had traveled to the United States of America, and they came back, and they're also in isolation, stable, and they've got a mild disease. The fifth case is a male, 30-year-old male, they didn't travel out of Zimbabwe, but they were in contact with the candidate number 2, who had gone to the United States and imported the disease. And however, they are in stable and mild disease. They are a Harare person. And the 6th one is a 40-year-old. Again, this is a contact of the candidate who had gone to Dubai and also in Rua, stable with a mild disease. The 7th, 24-year-old female, again, a contact of the Dubai case and located in Rua, stable and of mild disease. The 8th candidate, who is a new candidate from yesterday, from last night, is a 21-year-old male, again a contact of the case in Rua. You know, at the moment they are stable and they have mild disease. So that's our picture right now, you know, as far as Zimbabwe is concerned. You know, we are going to be expanding our testing scheme. That's one of the questions, whether we were doing adequate testing. We are going to be expanding our testing scheme. The University of, the NAST University have given us some equipment which we're going to be moving to Mpilo Central Hospital Laboratory, which is a level 3 laboratory, where we will be able to do more tests covering that region. You know, and we also want to expand and be able to do more tests in some of our own laboratories here in Harare, so that we can have more tests being done countrywide. And also eventually to have testing schemes in all our provinces, so that, you know, people don't have to move far. So once we get our rapid tests, we can be able to immediately do that, you know, and then at the same time we want to develop the golden standard method, which is the PCR. I think.
Thank you very much, Minister of Health. And you spoke on the expanding of the testing skills and contact tracing, which you'll be working together with our universities. Maybe I would just like the Minister in charge of universities to come in and buttress on that point.
Thank you very much, Honorable Chair. Yes, it's true that we have assembled a team that will work with the Ministry of Health in terms of contact tracing. This is basically a geographic information system and telephony-based geotagging system. Basically meaning location tagging system. And this is coordinated through, on our side, through the Zimbabwe National Geospatial and Space Agency, where which is going to be a coordinating mechanism for the geoscientists that will work together with the Ministry of Health, as we normally and usually do, to make sure that we develop a live system that is phone-based in conjunction with our Ministry of ICT, so that we are able to bring near real-time spatial epidemiological data. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Before I go further, we wanted to know, as a Ministry of Information, Publicity and Broadcasting Services, we don't want to leave any stone unturned in terms of giving information to the people. We're working very closely with the Ministry of Health and Child Care. Giving information is not just about giving information to people who are in towns, also people in rural areas, even in areas where they don't receive radio and TV. We are making use of the structures of the local government. They do have telephone numbers for all the village heads, the chiefs. So we are actually disseminating information about this COVID-19 because we want to rally the whole nation on this thing, so that we'll be able to curtail this threatening disease, COVID-19. So we are working very close. We are also making sure that we translate some of the information into our local languages, so that each and every Zimbabwean, wherever they are, they should be able to get this information. Moving on to Nyamayaro, he wanted to know from Home Affairs what sort of discipline to those who what sort of discipline are you expecting, will you do otherwise, to those violating the lockdown measures? Honorable Kazembe, maybe you can also tie it with the protective clothing, that they're seeing police at the roadblocks who do not seem to have protecting clothing.
Thank you, Honorable Chair. Our operations are guided by statutory instrument 83 of 2020, that Public Health COVID-19 Prevention, Containment and Treatment National Lockdown Order 2020. So maybe I'll just refer straight to a clause that speaks to what you have just asked. Any person who contravenes subsection 1 or 2 shall be guilty of an offense and liable to fine not exceeding level 12 or to imprisonment for a period not exceeding 1 year, or to both such fine and such imprisonment. To get more details, any person not covered by any of the exceptions listed in subsection 1 is found to be in breach of the lockdown shall A, be charged and notified that he or she will be summoned before a court to answer that charge and ordered to return immediately to his or her home, for which purpose an enforcement officer may accompany him or her. Or B, if he or she refuses to return immediately to his or her home, or has no home, or is unable to immediately return to his or her home by reason of being outside of a radius of 5 kilometers, or in the case of a person who is a driver or passenger of a vehicle 20 kilometers from his or her home, be treated as having escaped from any place of detention, isolation or quarantine, and accordingly may be arrested without warrant and put in any place of detention, isolation or quarantine under the terms of the principal regulations. And I must be very honest, the generality of our people have heeded the call to stay at home, and I want to sincerely thank Zimbabweans. Yes, we've had a few incidents here and there. I think about 19 people were arrested for offenses related to contravening the regulations. But consider that we've got in excess of 14 million in Zimbabwe. Surely 19 million is very, very negligible. I would like to sincerely thank Zimbabweans for heeding the President's call to stay home. I thank you.
Thank you very much. Minister of Finance, this question is quite, I don't know whether you want to tackle it. It is really nothing to do with what we discussed today, but I'm also, this is Nyamayaro, right? He says, where he said the UN Secretary General announced wavering of sanctions. I'm surprised how the UN can actually announce wavering, because in the first place, these are illegal sanctions imposed on Zimbabwe. They were never sanctioned by the United Nations. But anyway, if you want to tackle that, and also if you want at the same time to tackle the issue raised by Taku, he says 2%, which you have been collecting, how much are you projecting to use out of those funds during this lockdown? And he also wanted to know, are we going back to SI 142?
Thank you very much, Chair. Thank you, Nyanara, for the question. What you will find at the moment, you've got a chorus of 3 that is really calling for the international community to support countries like ours. One is a call from Madam Michelle Bachelet, who is the UN Commissioner for Human Rights, as you know. Who was really at the point that, relevant that on grounds of human rights, on humanitarian grounds, that's the way to say it, humanitarian grounds, sanctions on countries such as Zimbabwe should be eased. And that is I think it's a fair point. At the end of the day, we want to ease sanctions so that all our citizens, in this difficult time with coronavirus, they're not impacted by sanctions as well as the virus. You want both, but I think you want to, against the duty of rescue, as I said earlier, that's really the thinking here. I said it's a chorus of 3, but also we have had the calls from the IMF Managing Director, Christina Georgieva, and the President of the World Bank, Dan Malthus, saying that, again, countries around where low-income countries and low-income countries ought to receive some kind of debt relief during this period because of the impact of the coronavirus. And I must hasten to say that I was involved in a conference call last week with other ministers of finance across Africa. A conference call that was chaired by the heads for Africa, for the World Bank, for the IMF together, to say how can this be done? How can this debt forgiveness be done? So the IMF already announced a $25 billion facility global to support countries in this kind of move around coronavirus. So we're looking into that. We're engaging the federal institutions to see, and others, including the African Development Bank, African Bank, to see how Zimbabwe can also benefit in terms of debt rescheduling and debt forgiveness. So we're pursuing this. And to me, this is a very good moment for us to realize that we are all in this together. The fight is for us all. This is the fight against the virus, and no country is an exception. The rich, poor, under sanctions, we're under sanctions. We're all in together. And the thing about the virus is that if you decide not to help a country, and the community of the virus, they will infect you as well. It's a global problem. So you have to solve it everywhere, even in countries that are under sanctions. So if those then can be eased, can be lifted, so that we can fight this squarely, there's nothing for us. But we're following up on this chorus, which we welcome as a country. Now coming to Chair Bacchus, two questions. One on the 2% tax. So Minister, how much revenue are you going to lose? Don't worry about us losing revenue. Right now, worry about how we're going to use what we collect. That is the issue. But since you asked how much we lose, our initial estimate is 80 million. But I'm not concerned about that. Well, as government, not concerned about that. I'm concerned about how we use whatever we collect to, again, rescue our citizens through cash transfers, the SMEs, and the funding that we're directing towards the Ministry of Health and other ministries to support the fight against coronavirus. And that's the right thing to do. Now, on the US dollar introduction and policy shift, we're very clear. This is about the use of free funds that are in your pocket, Chairman, or in your bank account. We're saying that from now on, feel free to use those free funds in the shops as well. And what that does, it gives you the flexibility that you so desire given this tough episode, frankly. When cash shortage, it gives you flexibility for you to shop more freely, and that's a relief again to do with other citizens. That is all. It's not some policy shift, it's again a need to introduce flexibility in the system. But the reform agenda is very clear. Very consistent about this, but we see this as a way to give citizens relief in the shops. I think.
Thank you very much, Honorable Mutuli. That was very good. Yes, we are happy to hear those who are talking about humanitarian plea from UN Secretary General, IMF, World Bank, debt relief. That's very welcomed news in a time like this. And also, I think you're very clear about the 2%. I think, Taku, you have been answered. And the fact that there's no policy change, no policy move, but this is a relief during tough times. Desperate times, we need to come up with all to help our people. And then I think we've almost covered everything. Tendai Mugabe, are you happy? Because you asked why the cases are coming at night, all right? I'm sure the Minister of Health answered you adequately.
I think I didn't see him write anything about the nasopharyngeal or
and just, I wanted to come to Samuel 263 chat. You happy? The Minister, I think he tackled your question to some extent, didn't he? Why he said how, as a country, have been able to keep these numbers at a steady growth. I don't know whether he wants it. And but on the issue of massive testing, he touched on that. So maybe Minister of Health, if you want to make Samuel of 263 chat happy, He wants to know how, as a country, we have kept our numbers at a steady growth.
I didn't quite hear you, Chair.
Why we wanted to keep on this law?
Oh, I see. Why we have managed to keep and how we've managed to keep our numbers low. To start off with, it was to do with the initial controls. If you remember, all this is part of the health strategy that we are using on a continuous basis. So we started by making sure that everyone was coming through our borders, they were thoroughly checked. Then we applied the isolation processes, the self-isolation processes, which were being followed by our inspectors, our environmental health officers, right? So, you see, while we were working on that, we were actually making achievements. And then we moved into the next phase. There's one or two who escaped, and these were not foreign, but they were Zimbabweans returning home who had gone out. Are you appreciating that? You see, all that is part of the strategies. And also, we had those who were coming back home, they went to England, they went to the United States, came back home. Those were the ones we missed out. You know, and then they came in and they developed the condition. Otherwise, for US citizens, foreign citizens coming to Zimbabwe, we managed to capture isolation, including the Chinese, you know, where the disease was initially. So we were thorough with our border checks using thermal detectors, right? Then the next thing, we move into the stage where we now have the condition in Zimbabwe. We still have to contain it, right? So the strategy is to make sure that everyone, you know, in Zimbabwe is well monitored through who has come out from outside. They are well monitored. You know, our environmental health officers are going out and making sure that we check and make sure that they are thoroughly following the isolation procedures. Okay, so that was the time when we also realized that we had some contacts. So some cases who were with, rather some cases who developed, who had some contacts. So we followed up and traced these contacts. Immediately following up and educating the people, right, to be able to isolate themselves. You know, and then the ones which we tested, out of those who had isolated themselves, who had made contacts, we managed to make sure that they stayed on their own and not move out on a continuous basis. No, so it's all a matter of control activities. All along the way, control activities, control activities. You see what's happening in China and you immediately impose something which is bigger. So now we've got cases in Zimbabwe. And we also have local transmission. It's no longer just imported cases. We have to move to the next level. The next level is we start with partial lockdown, which is what we experienced, you know, in the last few weeks before we went for the total lockdown. You know, and as a result of the cases now arising from contacts, you know, with the original cases. So that is the strategy. You know, you go to the next level as the number of cases increase, as the number of cases or how they arise changes. Imported versus local transmission. At each move, you have to go one level up, you have to adjust. You know, so now we are in that level where we have the contact tracing showing that there is local transmission, and at the same time we have imported transmission. So it becomes very relevant to have this situation which we are in now in terms of public health strategy, so that we can be able to really contain it. Those cases that we know within country, we continue checking on them and so forth. And at the same time, we've reduced the number of cases coming from outside, so that we just deal with the few who are in country. So that's the strategy. I hope I've answered you.
Thank you very much, Minister of Health and Childcare. I think this brings us to the end of our post-briefing today. I just want to say the message to take home is to stay at home. We need to adhere to the measures which have been put into place. We will definitely do well if we work as a nation, as a population, to curtail this disastrous disease, COVID-19. I thank you sincerely. Chief Secretary.
Okay, thank you very much, members of the media.
I really want to thank my honorable colleague ministers. Sorry, Chief Secretary. I want to thank my colleague ministers. It has been really wonderful. It was houseful. Thank you.
I want to thank you and your team, Honorable Chair. So that's we end till we meet.
Okay, thank you.
Can I just announce that 10 o'clock tomorrow, Kobalabana, there's disinfection going on there. Please maintain social distance, which we didn't maintain it in here. Thank you.